Greetings and warm welcome to all the dignitaries present here. I am Asya from Clernet, serving as the allocated session assistant to ensure a seamless experience. Clernet stands as India's most relied upon digital platform, offering a multitude of enriching services exclusively for doctors. It is with great pride that Clernet serves as the digital partner for this event, hosted by the Indian Academy of Pediatrics, Uttarakhand, and the focus of today's session is Spark. So let's begin today's session, for which I would like to invite Professor Ashish Simalti, sir, to take over. Kindly proceed, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Very good afternoon. On behalf of the organizing team of the Spark module, I welcome you all to the inaugural episode of this webinar series. Spark. It's an acronym for Sharing Pediatric Academic Rounds and Knowledge. We aim to provide a common interactive platform to all postgraduate residents of Uttarakhand to share clinical experience and learn together. I'm grateful to Devbhoomi Society of Pediatrics, which is the state branch of IAP, for providing us with this opportunity. And now I request Dr. Ravi Sohota, IAP Secretary, to speak a few words, please. Ravi Sohota, sir, please.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Respected seniors, dear colleagues, young residents, good evening to all. On behalf of IIP Uttarakhand, that is Devbhoomi Society of Pediatrics, I warmly welcome you to the Spark Forum, which is about sharing pediatric academic rounds and knowledge. So, what is Spark? It's a dynamic platform for pediatric residents across Uttarakhand to present real life clinical cases, share experiences, and build diagnostic and management skills with peer and faculty. As the name suggests, we are here to ignite your clinical reasoning, to present, discuss, and learn together. These academic rounds are not only about case presentations, they are about learning the art of clinical thinking, gaining confidence, and preparing ourselves for the realities of pediatric practice and examinations. I would like to thank all the faculty, including Dr. Ashish Simalti, Dr. Rawat sir, Dr. Utkarsh sir, residents, and IAP leadership. President Dr. Hans Vash, Treasurer Dr. Rakesh Kumar for supporting this knowledge carnival. And I encourage everyone to actively participate, ask questions, and share your views without hesitation. Let us make this platform a vibrant academic community in Uttarakhand. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for these encouraging words. And now I would call upon IAP President Dr. Hans Vash to speak a few words, please. Dr. Hans Vash, please.
Hello, sir. I'm audible. Am I audible?
Yes, Dr. Hans, you're perfectly audible.
Hello. Good afternoon, everybody. First of all, I would like to congratulate Dr. Ashish Sumalti for executing this plan. A lot of times we have a lot of ideas, but we are not able to, unfortunately, execute it in Uttarakhand. So huge congratulations to Jolly Grant team as well as Dr. Sumalti and Dr. Rakesh for coming up with this Spark platform. It is an amazing way to learn online, especially for residents, so that we are all learning. We residents are learning. We as consultants are also learning every day. So why not keep sharing our knowledge and keep sharing interesting cases so that it will be advantageous to both us consultants as well as professors and the residents who are actually working with the cases. So I wish all the best to the Jolly Grant team for this Spark initiative, and let's hope we will be able to continue with these sessions on a regular basis so that we'll be able to create a momentum and involve more and more students, not only from Uttarakhand, also from all over India and maybe abroad, or maybe global. It can be a global movement if possible in future. Thank you so much. And I pass over to Dr. Samalti for the further proceedings. Thank you.
Thank,
Best of luck.
thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Hans. And as this to set the ball rolling, the first case would be presented by Himalayan Institute of Medical Sciences, which will be started with our resident, and moderator would be Dr. Professor Sanobar Wasim Madam, and the external expert would be Professor Utkarsh Sharma sir from SGRR. So to start, I would like to welcome our head of department, Dr. Anil Rawat, to take the scenario on. Thank you. Please, Dr. Anil sir.
Yeah, Dr. Ashish. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Oh, thank you. So, chief guest for today, Lieutenant General Daljit Singh, sir, retired, and Professor, Dean cum Principal, Himalayan Institute of Medical Sciences, Professor Utkarsh, Head, SGRR Institute of Medical Sciences, Professor Ashish Semalti, the coordinator for this event, President IIT Uttarakhand, Dr. Hans, Secretary Dr. Sahota, Treasurer Dr. Rakesh, all other IAPNs, various faculty members from all the medical colleges from Uttarakhand, and dear students. On behalf of Department of Pediatrics, I welcome you all to this event as mentioned SPARK. Teaching and learning is a dynamic process in the institute, and forum like this provide the opportunity to interact, to share the knowledge, and to provide critical input so that residents as well as faculty and all those who are participating are evolved as a pediatrician, as a doctor. Daljit Singh sir, despite being administration to all ranks till BG AFMS, is staunch clinician and a passionate teacher. I welcome you, sir. Hope the step we are taking today continues as long as it becomes a journey. So the spark today, which is inducted, will continue and it will bloom later on. So we should all strive for it. Let us make this as a productive and enriching experience. So everyone which is here is benefited and you all because of events like this. Thank you all and I welcome you again. Back to Dr. Ashish and Dr.
Yes.
Treya.
Thank you, sir. Now I would request our chief guest, Lieutenant General Daljit sir, AVSM, VSM, to speak few words, please.
Thank you, Ashish. Dear friends, I congratulate IAP Uttarakhand and the Department of Pediatrics, Himalayan Institute of Medical Sciences, under the leadership of Dr. Anil Rawat, who have taken this initiative. To go back a little in history, there is one Dr. Amdekar. I don't know how many of you have heard of him, Dr. Y. Amdekar. He belongs to Mumbai, a very good teacher, excellent teacher. He was the first one of the first ones who had started this process of online clinical meets. They would have it in the evenings, evening hours. They would have it, and group doing it for a long time. Came COVID, and then it became the common thing that everything was to be everything used to happen online. Lot of webinars used to happen. IAP and a lot of sponsors with IAP took a big lead at that time. IAP continues to do this even now under the platform DIAP. And they have OSCEs, they have webinars, they have topic discussions, case discussions. A lot of things are happening at there, and it keeps on happening regularly. Some of these are very popular, and a lot of students join. I have joined some of them and seen it myself, and there is excellent discussion. When you share the knowledge, when you share the practices, and there is cross involvement, it's like cross. We all know that when you have cross fertilization, the breed is always better. The product is always better compared to when you have auto pollination. So this cross fertilization, cross germination is what we all should aim at. And in today's times of connectivity, it should not be a problem at all. Dr. Ashish and Dr. Anil said that it should be a initiative to be once in 3 months. I said, why can't it be every month? I mean, we have case presentation at least once in a week in every medical college which we have. So one of those cases could be shared, and it could be by rotation. And in this regard, I will request the IAP president and secretary of Uttarakhand to take little pains and ensure that this happens. I mean, they'll also have to interact with the ClearNet or whomsoever sponsors it for them, because it's going to be online thing. So whichever way, I feel at least once a month we should meet, the pediatrician should meet, the resident should meet. There's an interaction, and as I said, the lot of ideas come, new perspectives come, and it adds to our knowledge and our approach to dealing with children as we train ourselves, as we learn ourselves, and as our residents here. With this, I wish all the best for Spark. May it light the spark, as Anil beautifully said, that light the spark of knowledge sharing in all of us. Jai Hind.
Thank you so much, sir, for these encouraging words. And I would definitely hope that the 1 month thing will become feasible. So, now, without taking any further time, let us start with the case. After the case, the case will be deliberated by our moderator and the subject experts. So, I am welcoming Dr. Shreya. Please.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dr. Shreya Varshne, and today I'll be presenting the case of Miss K, a 16-year-old female resident of Udham Singh Nagar, Uttarakhand. Informants are parents and patient herself and are reliable. She presented to the hospital with the complaints of fever for 1.5 years, which was on and off, joint pain for 6 months, easy fatigability, bed sores, oral ulcers, and weight loss for 3 months, and cough for 5 days. History of presenting illness. Patient was apparently well 1.5 years back when she developed fever. The fever had an insidious onset and was high grade, reaching up to 103 degree Fahrenheit. The initial febrile episode lasted for about 5 days and was associated with chills, rigors, malaise, body aches, and a characteristic evening rise in temperature. Although the fever temporarily subsided with medication, it recurred multiple times thereafter. The current episode has been ongoing for the past 3 days and exhibits similar features. There has been no history of rash during any of these episodes. About an year after the onset of fever, she developed joint pain, which was gradual in onset and initially involved the shoulders. The pain was described as dull aching type with intermittent flares. Over time, it was accompanied by warmth, swelling, and redness in the affected joints. It was observed that the pain used to worsen in early mornings and evenings, and it was associated with significant joint stiffness and restriction in movement. It showed an additive pattern with sequential involvement of elbows, wrists, and knees. Over the past 3 months, patient became progressively debilitated and was bedridden due to severe joint pains and malaise. She was only able to walk with support and also developed inability to fully extend arms and knees for the past 3 months. Over the past 3 months, the patient has been experiencing easy fatigability on minimal exertion. She also developed oral ulcers, particularly over hard palate. Her parents noticed the development of bed sores around 3 months ago, which first appeared over the lower back and later progressed to involve the buttocks. There has been a noticeable weight loss in the form of loosening of clothes. The patient developed a new onset dry, non-productive cough around 5 days ago. The onset was acute, occurring in 3 to 4 bouts daily. She reported that the cough tends to worsen on lying down and there was no diurnal variation. It was associated with breathing difficulty in the form of chest tightness and increased effort during breathing, especially during coughing episodes. The difficulty in breathing was more noticeable at rest or when lying flat. She also complained of sharp localized chest pain on the left side, which aggravated by coughing or taking deep breaths. There is no history of night sweats, bleeding, or bruising. The patient did not report any hair loss, photosensitivity, scalp lesions, or symptoms suggestive of Raynaud's phenomena. There was no preceding sore throat prior to the onset of illness. She has had no complaints of abdominal pain, abdominal distension, or gastrointestinal symptoms such as loss of appetite, nausea, recurrent diarrhea, or blood in stools. There is no history of rash, skin nodules, peeling, or desquamation of skin. Additionally, there is no history of increased urinary frequency, burning micturition, or hematuria. There is also no history of back pain or any history of trauma. The patient has no known contact with tuberculosis, and there is no history of prolonged drug intake. There were no pets at her home. Treatment history. She had visited various places over the last 1.5 years where she received symptomatic treatment. Fever and joint pain used to decrease on taking medication for 2 to 3 days, but again recurred. There was no significant past or birth history. Immunization history was she was incompletely immunized for age and last vaccinated at 9 months of age at Anganwadi. BCG scar was present. Developmentally, she had achieved all milestones on time and studies in class 12 with good scholastic performance. There is history of school absenteeism from the past 6 months due to health conditions. Dietary history. She was vegetarian. Dietary calculation as per 24-hour recall method revealed a deficit of 300 kilocalories per day and a deficit of 4 grams protein per day. There was no significant change in diet during the illness. Menstrual history was normal. However, she was amenorrheic from the past 6 months. There was no significant family history. Socioeconomic history. She belongs to the lower middle class according to the modified Kuppuswamy scale. She resided in the sugar factory staff quarters, Baspur, for the past 10 years and had access to piped municipal water supply, functional attached toilet, and proper drainage system. Summary. A 16-year-old female, first born to non-consanguineous parents, residing in sugar factory Baspur for the past 10 years, presenting with chronic episodic fever for 1.5 years, and additive symmetrical polyarthritis involving large joints over 6 months and acute onset cough. Complaints of joint restriction with morning and evening stiffness progressing to limitation of extension of elbows and knees, and bedridden status for the last 3 months. It was associated with systemic symptoms of weight loss, oral ulcers, restricted mouth opening, bed sores, chest pain, and breathlessness. There was no history of TB contact, dysphagia, odynophagia, no significant past perinatal or family history, and scholastically she was normal and incompletely immunized for age. On the basis of history, we thought of differential diagnosis, which could be divided into 2 groups. First was rheumatological disorders, which included juvenile idiopathic arthritis, systemic lupus erythematosus, juvenile dermatomyositis, and systemic sclerosis, and infection or malignancy, which included tuberculosis, leukemia, lymphoma, and Kala Azar. On examination, she was alert and awake, moderately built, and was lying in supine position. Her flex posture was present at both elbows and knees due to contractures, and limbs were supported and positioned to avoid further joint strain. Vitals on admission were stable except that she had mild tachypnea. On general examination, pallor was present. Right cervical lymphadenopathy was present, which was level 3, single mobile non-matted smooth surfaced lymph node, which was 1.5 to 2 centimeter, non-tender. No sinus and surrounding skin changes were present. Bipedal pitting edema was present. There was no icterus, clubbing, or cyanosis. Anthropometrically, she had grade 3 severe malnutrition as per the IAP classification. SMR staging was stage 4, which was normal for age. On head-to-toe examination, her hair were lusterless and thin. Hyperpigmentation was present on forehead. There was no facial dysmorphism. Eyes had bilateral subconjunctival hemorrhage. No nasal deformity was observed. In oral cavity, micrognathia was present, restricted mouth opening with multiple oral ulcers over hard palate and bilateral buccal mucosa, dental caries, glossitis, and angular cheilitis were present. Skin had generalized hyperpigmentation, generalized xerosis, feel of skin was leathery, there was no rash, petechia, purpura, eschar, or subcutaneous nodules observed. On musculoskeletal examination, she had severe wasting, bulk was bilaterally symmetrical with wasting, tenderness was present over the bilateral knee joint, and flexion contractures over the bilateral elbow, knees, and bilateral second and third metacarpophalangeal and interphalangeal joints. Spine, she had stage 3 bed sores present over the sacral and coccygeal region. No kyphosis, scoliosis, or gibbous was present. On musculoskeletal examination, muscle wasting was present. Gait could not be commented upon as she was unable to walk on her own. Lower limbs had bilateral contractures in semi-flex position. Rest lower limb examination was normal. Upper limbs also had bilateral fixed flexion deformities. Hands and wrists had flexion contractures over bilateral second and third metacarpophalangeal and interphalangeal joints. On respiratory system examination, she had a respiratory rate of 32 per minute, which was suggestive of mild tachypnea. Chest had fullness of intercostal spaces on the left side. Trachea was found to be shifted to right side. Trail sign was positive. Chest wall movements were decreased on left side. No scar mark sinuses or visible veins were present. All the findings of inspection were confirmed on palpation. Vocal phreatitis was absent on the left lung fields. On percussion, stony dullness was present on the left side, and on auscultation, breath sounds were absent over the left inframammary, inframaxillary, and infrascapular areas. Respiratory system examination was suggestive of left-sided pleural effusion. Cardiovascular system had a P2 component of S2 was found to be loud. CNS examination was normal. Abdominal examination was also normal. There was no organomegaly observed. On the basis of history and examination, we had differential diagnosis. First was systemic onset juvenile idiopathic arthritis, the points favoring which were age at onset, fever, chronic large joint involvement with stiffness, lymphadenopathy, anemia, serositis in the form of pleural effusion, contractures, and functional limitation. Absence of rash and splenomegaly were against this diagnosis. Second diagnosis was systemic lupus erythematosus, the points favoring which were fever, oral ulcers, joint pain, anemia, and serositis in the form of pleural effusion. The points against were no photosensitive rash, no renal or CNS involvement, and flexure contractures present. Systemic sclerosis, the points favoring which were skin hyperpigmentation, microstomia, flexion contractures, whereas the points against were no Raynaud's phenomena, digital ulcers, telangiectasia, esophageal dysmotility, and dysphagia. Mixed connective tissue disorder, the points favoring which were serositis in the form of pleural effusion, oral ulcers, overlapping features of SLE, systemic sclerosis, juvenile idiopathic arthritis. Points against were no Raynaud's phenomena, esophageal dysmotility. Sjogren's syndrome, the points favoring it were oral ulcers, angular cheilitis, leathery feel of skin, and arthritis, whereas the points against were no dry eyes or mouth. In infectious causes, we suspected pulmonary TB. The points favoring were prolonged fever, weight loss, evening rise in temperature, pleural effusion, lymphadenopathy, and cough, whereas the points against were no tuberculosis contact, normal spine, multiple joint involvement, and contractures. Leukemia and lymphoma, the points favoring were fever, fatigue, weight loss, cytopenia, lymphadenopathy, whereas the points against were no hepatosplenomegaly, no bleeding or bruising, no bony tenderness. Kala azar, the points favoring it were prolonged fever, arthralgia, anemia, skin hyperpigmentation, and weight loss, whereas the points against were no splenomegaly, endemic area, patient did not belong to the endemic area, and contractures. Investigations. The investigations were suggestive of anemia and thrombocytopenia. inflammatory markers were significantly elevated, suggesting an ongoing inflammatory infectious process. The coagulation profile was normal. Liver enzymes were slightly deranged, although renal function appeared to be preserved. The viral markers were non-reactive. Vitamin studies indicated deficiencies of both vitamin D and B12. Chest X-ray done was suggestive of cardiomegaly and left-sided pleural effusion. Pleural tapping was done, which was suggestive, and around 400 ml of clear fluid was obtained, which was sent for investigations and was suggestive of exudative type of pleural effusion. On urine analysis, urine RM showed protein 1 plus and bacteria 2 plus. Rest was normal and showed growth of E. coli with the following sensitivity pattern. Tubercular workup done was negative. Patient was then evaluated on the lines of connective tissue disorder. The anti-nuclear antibody test by indirect immunofluorescence was positive with a high intensity of 3 plus and a nuclear speckled pattern. The primary titer was 1:100. ANA profile showed strong positivity for ribonucleoprotein, RNP, Smith, and SSA antigen. Of these, anti-RNP positivity is particularly significant as it is considered the hallmark of mixed connective tissue disease. Additionally, the double-stranded DNA antibody level was markedly elevated and the rheumatoid factor was also raised. The nuclear speckled ANA pattern as seen in the image here is commonly associated with mixed connective tissue disease. European Alliance of Association for Rheumatology, that is the EULAR criteria for SLE, had a score of 28 and a score more than 10 is suggestive of SLE. Further, the skin biopsy was done from the right arm, which showed thrombotic vasculopathy with basement membrane thickening, which was suggestive of mixed connective tissue disorder. To look for other system involvement, patient was further evaluated and 2D echo was done in view of cardiomegaly, which was suggestive of mild tricuspid regurgitation with mild to moderate pericardial effusion. Cardiac markers were done in view of history of chest pain, which were normal. Ultrasound whole abdomen was also done, which showed mild ascites. HRCT thorax was done to look for interstitial lung disease, which revealed left hydropneumothorax and pericardial effusion. Few areas of ground glass haze seen in the right lung parenchyma was suggestive of interstitial lung disease. A densely calcified right hilar lymph node with eggshell calcification seen, measuring approximately 13 into 14 millimeters. Hilar lymphadenopathy can be seen in systemic sclerosis. In this case, the patient has been living near a sugar factory, suggesting possible silica exposure, which is known precipitating factor for systemic sclerosis. X-ray wrist was done to look for calcinosis cutis, which was absent, although the X-ray showed decreased bone density. Initially, so we had a final diagnosis of mixed connective tissue disease with associated features of UTI, which was culture positive for E. coli, vitamin D insufficiency, vitamin B12 deficiency, stage 3 bed sores with severe malnutrition. Initially, the patient was managed symptomatically and she was started on ceftriaxone, which were later changed to amikacin based on the urine culture sensitivity showing E. coli growth. Once the diagnosis of mixed connective tissue disorder was established, the patient was started on prednisolone, naproxen, mycophenolate mofetil, hydroxychloroquine, and sildenafil. Supportive care in the form of incentive spirometry and bronchodilators were given, following which her fever and joint pains gradually improved. The patient is currently due for follow-up, and as per a recent telephonic update, she is afebrile and clinically stable. Mixed connective tissue disease. Mixed connective tissue disease was first described by Sharp in 1972, and it is a rare autoimmune overlap syndrome that exhibits features of multiple connective tissue diseases. These include systemic lupus erythematosus, systemic sclerosis, dermatomyositis, polymyositis, and rheumatoid arthritis. The hallmark of mixed connective tissue disease is the presence of high titer anti-U1 RNP antibodies, often accompanied by clinical features like Raynaud's phenomena. This unique serological and clinical combination helps distinguish mixed connective tissue disease with other autoimmune diseases. The diagnosis of mixed connective tissue disease is made based on a combination of clinical and serological features. The mandatory criteria include the presence of high titer anti-U1 RNP antibodies, along with at least one of the following clinical findings of Raynaud's phenomena, puffy fingers, or hand edema. In addition to the mandatory criteria, the diagnosis is supported by either involvement of at least one major organ, such as pulmonary arterial hypertension, aseptic meningitis, or trigeminal neuropathy, or alternatively, the presence of at least two overlapping features from the following connective tissue diseases, such as SLE, systemic sclerosis, or myositis. The pathophysiology of mixed connective tissue disease involves a combination of autoimmune and vascular mechanisms. The process begins with the production of autoantibodies, particularly anti-U1 RNP, which form immune complexes. These immune complexes get deposited in tissues, leading to inflammation of skin, muscles, and lungs. Additionally, vascular changes are prominent in mixed connective tissue disease. These include Raynaud's phenomena, which results from the vasospasm of small blood vessels, nail fold capillary changes, which reflect the microvascular damage, and pulmonary hypertension, which is a serious complication due to progressive vascular remodeling in the lungs. Genetically, the condition is often associated with HLA-DR4 and DR2 alleles, which are thought to predispose individuals to the autoimmune response. Now, the manifestations of mixed connective tissue disease. The skin can have Raynaud's phenomena, puffy fingers, nail fold capillary changes, hand edema, telangiectasia, malar or discoid rash, hair loss or vasculitis. In musculoskeletal system, we can have inflammatory arthritis, myopathy. In pulmonary system, we can have dyspnea, dry cough, interstitial lung disease, and pulmonary hypertension. Cardiac system involvement can show pericarditis, pericardial effusion, myocarditis, arrhythmias, and atherosclerosis, whereas CNS can show trigeminal neuralgia, headaches, aseptic meningitis, cerebral venous thrombosis, hearing loss, peripheral neuropathy. Renal system can have membranous nephropathy, hypertension, progressive kidney disease. Hematological system involvement can show anemia, leukopenia, thrombocytopenia, immune thrombocytopenia, hemolytic anemia. In gastrointestinal system, we can have symptoms of GERD, malabsorption. Other symptoms can include pancreatitis, megacolon, duodenal bleeding, portal hypertension, autoimmune hepatitis, and protein-losing enteropathy. Now, the approach. A thorough clinical evaluation is crucial. This involves a detailed history focusing on symptoms of overlapping autoimmune disorders and a comprehensive physical examination. Supporting lab tests and imaging helps reinforce the diagnosis. The key lab findings to highlight are the presence of anti-U1 RNP antibodies, ANA profile, and anti-SMN antibodies. Other systems which may be involved should also be evaluated. Cardiovascular system is most commonly involved, hence investigations such as chest X-ray, HRCT, ECG, pulmonary function test, and right heart catheterization should be done. Investigations should also be done to look for other system involvement such as musculoskeletal, GI, and neurological system. Evaluation should be done if symptoms are present. Management depends on the system involved. For arthritis and arthralgia, NSAIDs and hydroxychloroquine are the first line, and steroids are added if symptoms are severe. In cases of myositis or serositis, steroids are combined with immunosuppressants like azathioprine, mycophenolate, or IVIG. Interstitial lung disease may require agents like mycophenolate, cyclophosphamide, or rituximab. Pulmonary hypertension is managed using the vasodilators like sildenafil or epoprostenol and endothelin receptor antagonists like ambrisentan along with immunosuppression. Raynaud's phenomena is managed by avoiding triggers like cold, caffeine, and using vasodilators such as nifedipine. The GI symptoms may need proton pump inhibitors, prokinetics, or dietary adjustments. Hematological system involvement responds to steroids. Refractory cases may benefit from rituximab. Now, the prognosis. The mixed connective tissue disease generally has a good prognosis, though this depends on the extent of the organ involvement. The mortality rate ranges from 3 to 10%, and the main cause of death includes pulmonary hypertension, interstitial lung disease, and cardiac or infectious complications. Poor prognostic markers include anti-SMN antibodies, anti-Ro52, which is associated with severe interstitial lung disease, and IgG anticardiolipin, which may indicate severe disease. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Shreya. That was nicely presented. And it was an interesting case of chronic nature. And there were a lot of overlapping features which made it difficult initially to pinpoint a diagnosis. For postgraduate residents, the case again reiterated the point that all fever is not necessarily infection. And rheumatological disorders and malignancies are important non-infectious causes of prolonged fever that all of you should be looking for when you find that just the presence of an infection, like just UTI in this case, was not able to explain all the features. And these type of cases, especially when they present after taking treatment from multiple places, many of their features are masked. So a thorough history and a detailed clinical examination becomes important. Like in this case, when they presented to us, the parents were primarily focused just on the fever and joint pain. The contractures, the skin features, and the chronic respiratory embarrassment, it all came out when we further prodded into the history and did a clinical examination, detailed clinical examination of this patient. As it happens with all chronic cases, they require a lot of investigation and finances become problem in many of these cases. Thankfully, we were able to reach to a diagnosis in this case, although still a lot of workup is left, which we have planned to look for other autoimmune disorders in this patient when the patient turns to us for follow-up. I now invite our subject expert, Professor Utkarsh Sharma sir, for his expert comments and insight in this. Utkarsh sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. An excellent presentation, Dr. Shreya. I would like to just want to address few points, especially on clinical scenario. As the case self shows, polyarthritis, oral ulcer, cirrhosis, muscle wasting, anti-SM, anti-RNP, SSA antibodies strongly suggest diagnosis. Either it is SLE or it is mixed connective tissue disorder. That is true. And you have thoroughly investigated few clinical points. One, that she is also having amenorrhea from last 6 months, which you have pointed out in history. Second thing is, when you said you have excluded SLE, for exclusion of SLE, especially if I think that it is mixed connective tissue disorder, I need to have either myositis, esophageal dysmotility, or Reynolds phenomena, generally seen typically in patients who are having mixed connective tissue disorder, as compared to, or although symptoms may be overlapping. I want to know whether you go for urine protein creatinine ratio for lupus or CPK for myositis, or these investigations to rule out whether there are predominant involvement of muscle or kidneys there or not.
Yes, sir. Sir, as ma'am had mentioned, that the patient had some financial restraints and every investigation could not be done. But sir, we had done CPK-MB, which was normal. And sir, as for the Raynaud's phenomena and puffy fingers, so the patient was already receiving antipyretics and anti-inflammatory drugs, which might have masked the symptoms in the patients, and that might not have been present at the time of presentation.
Why she is having amenorrhea from last 6 months? Have you worked up for this?
Sir, we had done, so as the patient had severe wasting and malnutrition, so we had thought of that as a cause of amenorrhea, sir.
But malnutrition is a chronic phenomenon. Okay. Anything else you want to say about this case? About pulmonary hypertension, you have done for echo. Are you getting, because P2 was loud?
Yes, sir.
Is
Sir,
it evident?
pressures also, sir, right systolic pressures were also raised, sir.
Because it is a prognostic indicator. You have also mentioned in clinical examination that P2 was loud.
Yes, sir.
Whether this finding was evident in your echo?
Sir, echo was not suggestive of that, but sir, on clinical examination, P2 was loud, sir.
So when we did an echo of the patient, there was a tricuspid regurgitation and right ventricular systolic pressure was raised, which we can take as an indirect indicator of pulmonary hypertension. Although to confirm it, cardiac catheterization would be required, of course. And regarding, sir, what you asked about muscle involvement, you are very correct, because myositis and esophageal dysmotility and dysphagia or genophagia, they are very important characteristics that we see in mixed connective tissue disorder. CPK done was normal, but since she had so much of muscle wasting, it can come normal even in the presence of muscle involvement. We had thought of doing a muscle biopsy also, but we had only, we could do either a skin biopsy or a muscle biopsy. So we went for the skin biopsy.
That is excellent.
We have these planned up for the next visit whenever the patient comes to us.
So nice. Thank you. A good and I think very interesting case. It will give a lot of information and thought to all of the listeners, I think. And my best wishes to you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. I now hand over to Professor Ashish Simalty, sir, to further take over.
Thank you, ma'am. Firstly, may I request the clarinet host to please enable other videos? I think I got some messages that some people are not able to on their videos. There's been disabled by the host. Clarinet host, can you please look into it? Second thing is, are there any questions from other faculty members, other heads of departments, or any residents? Anything related to the case or anything related to the disease?
Sir, there is no questions in the chat box, so
Okay.
I guess there is no question from the participants.
Okay. Actually, I think from the link, many of the faculty members are not able to access the chat box. That's the message I'm getting. Anyways, if there are no further questions, so I bring the session to an end. Firstly, I would like to thank Professor Sanobar, Dr. Shreya for an excellent presentation, and Utkarsh sir for giving our your expert comments. It was a very insightful thing, and I would like to thank all the participants who attended the meeting. I'd like to thank the team of HIMS, Department of Pediatrics, HOD Professor Anil Rawat, and the principal sirs, the chief guest, Lieutenant General Daljit sir, for gracing this occasion. And I would also like to thank the whole IAP team, IAP President Dr. Hans, IAP Secretary Dr. Ravi Sahota, and Dr. Rakesh. In fact, Dr. Rakesh has been the most dynamic and been the backbone of this whole presentation. So I thank him, and I also thank the whole clarinet team. And before I conclude, let me just introduce our upcoming CME, which is going to be a big international level CME, Simulus 10. This is going to be a healthcare simulation for quality and safety. It is of interest to not only pediatricians, it is also of interest to anesthetists and all emergency physicians. So I would request all of you to see if you can attend it. It's going to be worth your time. And in this also there are two workshops which are specific for pediatrics. There's a STEP workshop and there's a NeoSim workshops. So do consider attending these conferences. So with this,
Before we wind up, am I allowed to say something, Dr. Simalty?
Sorry, ma'am.
Am I allowed to say something?
Please, ma'am, may I request Dr. Professor
So you
Alpa
have
Gupta?
certain things.
Ma'am, इधर ही
So it was an excellent.
इधर ही आ जाइए मैम, इधर ही आ जाइए. Professor Alpa Gupta, I'll just request her to use my own this thing so that the confusion is not there. Ma'am, please.
Okay. That was a very good start, and the stimulus, as we're talking about stimulus here, the stimulus came from our dean sir, and it was a very good, initiative which has been taken up. There are certain messages in the inbox. There are certain messages in the inbox, in the chat box. Unfortunately, we don't know. It's not visible. The names are not properly visible. So let me read out. The first one says not a correct way of PG case presentations. The second one is for it to be more useful for PG discussion can be related to analysis of symptoms. Now, I think what I feel it's probably coming from the faculty only. I think the messages have been has been well taken, and because it was a start, probably later on we'll be able to refine it better. And thank you for giving this feedback. Okay, but anyway, so a start is a start, and there's always a scope for improvement. Thank you all for joining here. Dr. Shreya, all the best. Yeah, for the next presentations. And
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you for completing the session. So with this, I bring the session to close, and thank you for all the those critical inputs, because that they will make us improve for the next talk. Thank you.
So much everyone for giving us the opportunity to host the session. So with all your permission, I'm closing the session over here for today. Thank you.
can I say something? Clarinet is a host.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. See, this is faculty, and it would be nice that we are visible to each other. So please, next time when we have these sessions, please ensure that our videos are on. They're not.
Ma'am, you need to turn on your video from your side, ma'am. We don't have the access.
It's disabled from the host.
Now I think you can. Please check once.
Now I can do it.
Yes,
Now I
yes.
can do it.
Yes, yes.
Thank you for doing that. But next time whenever we have these sessions, it would be nice that we are visible to each other. And,
Yeah, sure, ma'am.
so the names are also not the first names. They're all the surnames here. They're all the surnames you are not able to recognize. Without the video, will not be able to recognize anybody here. So,
Yes, ma'am. Also, they can rename themselves if they want, ma'am.
Sorry.
Everyone can rename
It was
themselves.
disabled from the host side. So this is just a feedback for because the technology always has a glitches. So next time, please, it would be nice if we don't waste time on all this. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
You can finish the meeting. Thank you. Thank you, Clarinet.